Exodus, a part of chapter 3, where Moses sees the burning bush, the wonder of it, that the bush itself is not consumed, and says, I will turn aside to see this marvelous thing. And God called to him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am. Then he said, Do not draw near to this place. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you stand is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. Moses hid his face. He was afraid to look upon God. The Lord said, I have surely seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sorrows. So I have come down to deliver them out of the land of the Egyptians, to bring them up from that land to a good and large place, a land flowing with milk and honey, a place of the Canaanites and the Hivites and the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites. Now, therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel has come to me. I've also seen their oppression, which the Egyptians oppressed them with. Come now, therefore, and I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said, Who am I, that I should go before Pharaoh, and that I should bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? Jehovah said, I will surely be with you. And this shall be a sign to you that I have sent you. When you have brought the children of Israel out of Egypt, you shall serve me upon this mountain. Moses said to God, Indeed, when I come to the children of Israel and I say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you, they will say to me, Who is he? What is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. Thus you shall say to the children of Israel, I am has sent me to you. Moreover, God said to Moses, Thus you shall say to the children of Israel, The Lord your God, the Lord of your fathers, the God of Abraham and of Isaac and of Jacob, he has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial to all generations. Amen. Our final lessons, one is from the Arcana Celestia, Heavenly Secrets, number 3,200, and the other from that same work, number 6,866. Speaking of the Lord's own states while he was in the world, it should be known that these states did not come forth one time only, but continuously during the Lord's whole life in the world until he was fully glorified. The same is the case with a person as the Lord regenerates them. They're not regenerated all at once, but continually during their whole life, and even in the other life, for a person can never be fully perfected. And the Arcana number 6,866 is treating of the words from the book of Exodus, where Moses says to God, and the internal sense related to the Lord's own state of mind and reflections or perceptions or thoughts he had, which these words are representing. The Lord was in states of humility or humiliation when he was in or thinking from the human which he inherited from Mary and not from the divine. In this human which he took on, he was by hereditary evil led into all things of evil. And he could not come before the divine without a state of humiliation or humbleness. In genuine humiliation, a person divests themselves of all their ability to think and do anything from themselves, and they wholly leave themselves to the divine. They abandon themselves to the divine, and thus they can draw near to the divine. The divine was indeed in the Lord because Jesus was conceived of Jehovah, but this could appear remote insofar as the Lord was in his human from Mary. And the heredity from Mary would cloud over or seem to remove the divine. There was then an unlikeness of state between the Lord's natural human and his divine. And when that takes place, there's a sense of remoteness. All this shows what came forth when we speak of the Lord's humiliation when he was in the world. But afterwards, he put off all of those natural human things which he took on from Mary by heredity, insomuch that he was then no longer called his son, but he put on everything which is of the divine. Then that state of humiliation ceased, for then he was one with Jehovah. Amen. We have been following the series that is presented in the Journey Program book on the stories of Daniel, and we're coming to chapter 4, which is what we've read for the lesson and talked about in the children's talk. King Nebuchadnezzar is a great illustration of our own lives and our own insanity when it comes to believing that of ourselves we are anything. Of ourselves, in one sense, we are nothing. It doesn't do a whole lot of good for a pastor or a friend or a parent, sibling, a child to tell you all the truth about yourself, if in fact it's just going to hit you like a ton of bricks and you just walk away feeling worthless or ashamed or humiliated. The Lord doesn't approach us with that intention by giving us the truth about ourselves. It's not because there's any glory in the Lord humiliating us. And one of the best ways to come to understand that is to look at the Lord's own life. To recognize that the Lord himself had to go through states of humiliation, humbleness, and feelings even of shame concerning his own identity as a young boy, a young man, growing up. The Lord would identify with those feelings so they would be real. They would feel very real to the Lord. And it wasn't because the divine within him, what we refer to as the Father, wished to humiliate the Son. Far, far from it. The Lord had to come into those states so that human beings in the spiritual world, human beings in hell, human beings in heaven, obviously also human beings on earth, could each connect with the Lord's own states. And everything that we ever feel or experience while we are in our hubris, in the natural of our human, in the not divine, which we never are, when we're in those states, we should know the Lord experienced everything that we're experiencing. He did not proceed towards and act out of those states. He dwelt within them and glorified himself out or through them. So we know the Lord never sinned, but the Lord experienced the states of humiliation, shame, grief, anger, disgust, fear, vigilance, terror, ecstasy, joy. I'm going to put up a chart. I know you won't be able to all read it from where you are. It's sometimes referred to as an emotion daisy. It's in the shape of a flower, or the format of a flower. And it just lists what people have come to pretty much understand as the basic emotions. The Lord experienced all of the same emotions, feelings that we have. And so this colorful chart just goes around in a circle from joy and trust and fear, surprise, grief, rage, vigilance, ecstasy. I put shame down in this corner as a combination of sadness and disgust, grief and loathing. There's nothing wrong with shame. Toxic shame is deadly. The same thing you would say about any emotion. There's nothing wrong with love. Misdirected self-love is deadly. Love itself. When from the Lord, received into our hearts, we will turn it one way or another. In the story of Nebuchadnezzar, we have a great king. It's experiencing a breakdown of mental health. And it's done in that story to represent the things of the Lord that have to do with His attachment to the states of people, angels, devils, people on earth, people in the spiritual world. The Lord allowed Himself to be approached by all these states that people have, both good and bad. None of them are genuinely good unless the Lord is in them and the Lord is recognized as being in charge of them. So we can experience jealousy, for example, as a state. And if it rules our life because it's all about us feeling jealous that other people have things, we know we're breaking the 9th and 10th commandment, coveting what others have, jealous, green with envy. But if we're zealous, another form of jealousy, that our marriages not be attacked by adulterous thoughts and feelings, that our children be protected from harmful things, and we're zealous, we're jealous for them to have what's good. Those are good things when we acknowledge that they come from the Lord to help guide and protect us. There are 4 things mentioned especially related to the love of self. Honor, reputation, glory, and gain. That if those things are the motivators, our self-honor, our reputation, what people will say about us. Reputation, honor, glory. King Nebuchadnezzar is the poster child or poster king for being all into his own glory and majesty. And gain. Honor, reputation, glory, and gain. 4 things spoken about over and over again, that the love of self loves to find within the love of the world. Those are evils if they're directed from ourself to ourself and put everybody else outside. All those things can also be very good. The angels have a love and respect that things come to them and they are in heaven, which is a glorious state to be in. But they have those loves from the Lord. And we're told about kings or princes, priests, and servants in the other world who are glad to receive glory and honor from God for the sake of the office that they perform, and acknowledge that it is not theirs, but it is the Lord's with them. King Nebuchadnezzar went crazy. Kind of like what this little display is doing to me. I think I can take it down now. King Nebuchadnezzar went insane, and for 7 years, we're told, he was out acting like a beast, his hair growing like eagle's feathers, his nails like claws, to represent really what is the ultimate end of the higher they are, the greater they fall, the high loves of self and the world that can take over in our minds. There's nothing wrong with shame. Toxic shame is deadly. But there's nothing wrong with humiliation. Toxic humiliation can kill us. When we study chapter 4 of Daniel and we look at what was taking place with the humiliation and the shame that he was experiencing, we understand the Lord allows us to come into those states to help break something in us that oftentimes can't be broken any other way. Love of self, love of the world, love of honor, reputation, and glory, and gain for the sake of self. Without those breakings, which are a form of temptation, we cannot be regenerated by the Lord. The Lord can't just take who we are, how we're born and how we're raised, and say, "You're great the way you are. Come into heaven. Here it is. It's all yours." Because we'll come into states then and we'll go, "How glorious is my heaven. How great is the majesty of my spiritual home." That has to be broken, and it's not done away with in a moment. The lesson from the Arcana Celestia talks about these states coming and going continuously. These states did not come forth once only with the Lord or with us, but continually during the Lord's whole life until He was glorified. The case is the same with people who are being regenerated. They're not regenerated at once, but continuously during their whole life, and then even into the other life, because man is never perfect. Mankind, people. Makes us squirm, perhaps, to think about talking about mental illness and states of mental illness. We're told in one place in Divine Providence that people cannot be reformed in a state of mental illness because their rationality is gone. People can't be reformed in a state of overwhelming fear or a state of overwhelming passion of any sort. The Lord needs us to operate in a state of rationality and freedom. And insanity comes to us when we are so taken up with our own selves that we put ourselves before the Lord and before others. It is insane to worship false gods. And usually the first false god we worship is ourselves. So the Lord gives us the truth. In the first commandment, worship no other gods. In the first commandment that the Lord repeated to the disciples when they asked Him, people asked Him, "What is the first and great commandment?" "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, and all your mind. And the second is like unto it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself." These ideas break self-centered loves. And in breaking them, there is pain. There is agony, there is terror, there is fear, there is shame. People say about some situation, "Oh, I heard your sister's in the hospital. What a shame." No, that's just a wrong use of that term. People often say when something's just, not so well, you say, "What a shame." No, really? Shame. Shame comes as a result of and is connected with guilt. But it's more than just doing something wrong where we can say, "I'm guilty." I took your coffee cup and I drank the coffee out of it because I really wanted my coffee and I'm guilty. Shame is more than that. Shame involves a level of feeling like and identifying with being worthless, wrong, evil, nothing. And as I said earlier, it's not that shame itself is a bad thing. It's a true thing to feel, in fact, that we are nothing. It can be very useful. It's when the evil spirit's with us, or our own sense of worthiness or unworthiness is abused, and it comes to us and speaks to us in our own voice, that we can become ashamed and covered over in shame to such an unhealthy extent that we can become crippled. Toxic shame is the kind of shame we can use on ourselves or we can have used on us. Probably all of us have done it to one extent or another. It's very powerful to use shame with people around us. Parents, we can use it against our children, siblings against your other siblings, friends against friends. Whenever we expose ourselves and people begin to know who we are and what our fears are and what our weaknesses are, we expose ourselves, and we do that especially to the people that we love, that we may become closer to them, that we can love them given their human condition and they can love us. Parents know a lot about their children. children know a lot about their parents, siblings with each other, and close friends. We are then holding a precious thing in our hearts when we know these things about others. The Lord knows everything about us. And when we approach the Lord, or the Lord draws near to us, he says, take your shoes off, as in the story of Moses, because you are now on sacred or holy ground. When we know the faults and flaws of ourselves and others, we too are on holy or sacred ground. That we could do so much damage, and we can especially do so much damage to those we love so much. And sadly, it becomes a natural thing if we were born into it. And so many generations of our parents and their children and our grandparents, and as we go up, we're taught how to use toxic shame as a parenting technique. To put someone on a guilt trip so that they will actually do what we want. It's a powerful and deep lesson to learn the difference between helping someone because you know their foibles and their faults and their evils, they're acting out, and somehow using that to shame them to get what you want. We have a great power when we're close to anyone to be very careful how we hold the secrets of others. There is a technique in the other world that takes advantage and uses this fact of people knowing what they know about other people. It only comes up when somebody is in denial, which is one of the chief characteristics of both mental illness and addiction and self-centeredness. It's one of the techniques that's used when people arrive and think, wow, I've made it. Look at, can I go to heaven? Sure, come into heaven. Are you able to live here? Oh, yeah, I belong here. I was born for heaven. Okay, well, let's look at some of the things that help you stay here in heaven. Well, one of the things that happens is people deny that they actually have some loves that are self-centered. They deny that they have acted out in certain ways. The fact of the matter is the book of life, our memories are all available. And when people say, well, I'm a really good man, I belong in heaven because I'm an honest man, never cheated anybody. Guess what happens when you say that and you actually have cheated someone? Whether it's in heaven or in the world of spirits, it's part of our process. It says, what were those big screens, Trinitron? I forget what they're called. But on the football stadiums where they have a big screen and they show a couple kissing or something and pan around the audience. That's what happens in the other world when we deny that, in fact, we have done this or that bad thing, acted out in certain ways. It's presented, it says, to the life of all people around us who especially would be affected by it. Which is a good reason why in this world we try really hard, don't we, to do our reformation and regeneration, to repent of our evils, not to repeat them, but not to hide that we have done certain things. Who we share it with is very important. It shouldn't be broadcast to the world. We have those boundaries while in the natural world that we will have removed in the world of spirits and the other world. But we can go back into those things which we have done wrong and reconcile them. Make confessions to people who would be good at hearing a confession, and make amends to the people that we have harmed. And to try our best to continually do that. King Nebuchadnezzar came to himself like the prodigal son and gave glory to the Lord. Very quickly after this, he passed away, and his not-so-good son, Belshazzar, took over, the one we'll find out about next week, who had the writing on the wall, "Mene, mene, tekel upharsin, you have been found wanting, you've been weighed and measured, and your kingdom shall be taken from you." It's the flip side of actually getting in touch with your spiritual states and going through temptations, getting in touch with states of mental health and mental illness, doing what you need to do, not being in denial to get help if you need it, and then being restored. Belshazzar was not restored. He remained in denial, but that's next week. King Nebuchadnezzar was restored. And it's good for all of us to know the Lord has nothing but the best intentions for us in loving us and wanting us to come out of our insanity of self, our states of addiction to evils, our states of mental illness and insanity concerning things around us. Takes no glory in that, but often can use those states to bring us closer to his kingdom. We are not God, and we make that acknowledgement, and it is a state of humility to recognize that we of ourselves can do nothing. Only God can do that which is good. And so we give glory to the Lord, and we study and we pray that the Lord will help us do a better job of following his word. Help us do a better job of getting help when we need it in states of mental illness, physical illness, spiritual illness. Come to recognize and therefore not be in a state of denial concerning our own states. The word has been given to give us light and understanding. Let us use that light to proceed closer and closer to the Lord and into his kingdom. Amen.